The last time my sister said my name, it was inside a police station right before she handcuffed me in front of our mother. She called me a liar, a fraud. Said I'd shamed the family and our father's memory. I didn't argue. I didn't fight. I just watched her read me my rights like I was a stranger. Because in her eyes, I was. That night, I learned something no battlefield ever taught me. The cruelest wars aren't fought overseas. They happen at your own dinner table. My name is Cora Hayes, and this is the story of how my sister tried to arrest me and ended up saluting me instead. I hadn't been back to Wolf Creek, Montana in 10 years. Not since my father's funeral. That town was a wound that never quite scabbed over, small enough for every secret to echo and mean enough to remember who ran away. Thursday afternoon, I found a letter waiting in my mailbox. A real one. Heavy paper. Blue ink. The kind people used before they learned to hide behind screens. Dinner at Mom's. Sunday, 6 p.m. family only. Serena. No warmth, no apology, just command. Typical Serena. I held it for a long time. The ink had smudged a little like she'd written it fast, but still managed to make it look official. She always did. The last time we'd spoken, her voice was colder than the casket between us. Don't bother coming back if you can't stay. And I hadn't. That night in my office, Major Cole glanced over my shoulder. Serena sent you something? He asked. Yeah. One sentence. Dinner. Sunday. He smirked. That's not dinner. That's a summons. I laughed, but it caught somewhere deep in my chest. In the military, silence means discipline. In my family, silence means exile. I slipped the letter into my jacket pocket, filed at E for 3 days leave, and told myself I wasn't going home to fix anything, just to look the storm in the eye. Before turning in, I remembered something a base therapist once told me after Afghanistan: you can't heal what you refuse to face. Maybe he was right. Because when I looked again at Serena's signature sharp steady carved into the page like a warning, I knew exactly what this was. Not a reunion, a reckoning. That night, a knock came at my door. A local officer stood there, hat tucked under his arm, holding another envelope. Message from Sheriff Hayes. Inside was my mother's address and one more line handwritten in the same blue ink. We'll all be there. Don't be late. I folded the note, slid it into my bag, and said quietly to the empty room. All right, Serena. Let's see what kind of dinner you've set. I reached Wolf Creek late Sunday afternoon. The kind of quiet that feels rehearsed hanging over the town. The same storefronts lined Main Street. The same leaning welcome home sign, paint peeling like old skin. The only thing that had changed was who was gone. Mom's house sat on a small hill overlooking the lake. White siding scrubbed, 2 clean windows polished to reflection. Parked dead center in the driveway was Serena's patrol car, shining territorial. Its siren light catching the last of the sun. On the porch, a small metal plate read, "Property under police protection." I couldn't tell if it was meant to protect her or protect everyone else from her. Mom answered the door. She looked thinner shoulders, drawn eyes, tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. She hugged me briefly, a ghost of warmth. I'm glad you came, she whispered, then softer. Don't argue tonight, sweetheart. I wanted to ask why, but old instincts kept my mouth shut. Serena appeared behind her crisp uniform badge, polished like a threat. You actually made it, she said, more observation than greeting. Didn't want to give you the satisfaction of saying I ran again, I said. Her lips curved, half smile, half smirk. Then sit. We have a full house. Inside the dining room glowed too bright. 2 of her deputies stood near the archway, not eating, just watching. Across the table sat a row of familiar faces, aunts, uncles, cousins, all pretending they hadn't spent years calling me a disappointment. What's the occasion? I asked. Serena's tone was casual. Just a normal family dinner. Too smooth, too deliberate, a lie dressed up as hospitality. The picture of our father still hung on the wall, but it had been moved from the center to make room for one of Serena receiving her sheriff's badge. Mom's wine glass trembled slightly each time Serena spoke. Even the air seemed to wait for her permission. Then I saw him, a man standing outside by the porch rail, phone to his ear, eyes flicking toward the window. Leather jacket, average build, familiar. The same private investigator I'd warned off months ago. Expecting company, I asked. Serena didn't look at me. Dinner's for family. But her eyes shifted for just a second toward the glass. That was enough. This wasn't dinner. It was a setup. And I just walked into her courtroom. The warmth in that room was fake, like stage lighting, bright but cold underneath. Mom kept pushing food toward me, her hands shaking. Serena filled every silence with questions. No one wanted to answer. How's work? How's life? How's pretending to be okay? Laughter rippled down the table. The brittle kind that dies too fast. When it came to me, Serena leaned back, eyes sharp. So, Cora, still working for that. What was it? Department of Defense? Something like that. I said something secret, huh? Something that pays the bills. Laughter again. Mine included. Only Mom didn't join. She just stared at her napkin, fingers white from the grip. Serena poured herself more wine, the sound too loud in the silence that followed. Dad would have been proud of me, she said. He always said loyalty starts at home. Her gaze pinned me like a target. You remember that, right? I set my fork down. I remember he said loyalty means doing your duty. Mine just had a different uniform. Her smile sharpened. The air thickened. She'd gotten exactly what she wanted, a spark to burn with. Then someone near the end of the table muttered. She's not even in the system, you know. Serena checked. Every head turned my way. I looked at Serena. She didn't deny it. She only twisted her sheriff's ring the same way she used to crack her knuckles before a fight. That's when I saw it. A red folder on the chair beside her, clear plastic cover stamped with the sheriff's office insignia. The bold print on top read Cora Hayes, federal fraud. I felt the room tilt, the buzz of whispers closing in like static. So this was her grand performance. Not a dinner, a public trial. I met her eyes and let a slow, cold smile spread. You really went that far, huh? Her voice was calm, triumphant, far enough to protect this family from a liar. I nodded once. Then I hope you check the jurisdiction, Sheriff. I glanced at my watch. The minute hand ticked forward, steady as a heartbeat. A few more minutes and everything she thought she controlled would burn down around her. Serena's glass hit the table with a soft thud, but the silence that followed was heavier than the sound itself. She rose, uniform, crisp badge, gleaming authority, radiating like heat. Before dessert, I'd like to make something clear about my sister. Every eye turned to me. Mom whispered for her to stop, but Serena lifted her hand, already in control. She held up the red folder I'd seen earlier, the sheriff's seal catching the light. These documents prove that Cora Hayes has been impersonating a federal officer. The words cut through the room like glass. Gasps, whispers, and one shaky laugh that died halfway out of someone's throat. She flipped through the pages, ID cards, photos, even a classified warehouse, and delivered her verdict. The Department of Defense confirmed there's no record of her. Mom's spoon clattered. Serena pressed on, voice rising. She's been lying to us. To you. To Dad's memory. I stayed still, calm. The scars on my wrist itched as I shifted, pressing my hip against the belt. The emergency ping went out. 12 minutes. Serena unclipped her cuffs. Cora Hayes, you're under arrest. The metal bit into my skin, cold and familiar. Mom screamed. Serena ignored, her eyes bright with triumph. Behind her, one of her deputies lifted a phone recording. Transparency, Serena called it. I caught a glimpse of the live icon. Not a recording, a live stream. The Wolf Creek Sheriff's Office was broadcasting my arrest. She turned back to me, savoring it. For years, my sister fooled this family. But tonight, justice is served. I met her gaze steady. You think justice cares about your dinner show? You're not one of us anymore. She snapped. You're right. I'm not. 6 minutes. The SUV outside flicked its light. No one spoke. Serena hovered by the door, righteous fury masking fear. You know, it's sad how people like you think you can fool everyone. People like me, the ones who leave and come back pretending to be heroes. I said nothing. Silence had saved my life more times than words ever could. 5 minutes. The signal reached Fort Carson. The OSDI team was already moving. Serena's voice grew louder. You accessed a federal storage unit. I told her that's a felony. You're bluffing. 2 minutes. The house buzzed with tension. Mom whispered, please say something. She wouldn't believe me even if I did. 1 minute. Serena placed her gun on the table beside the folder. You know what's sad? Mom still believes you. No, Serena. She just doesn't want to see you like this. The front door opened. A cold draft swept through. A woman's voice came from the kitchen. Sheriff Hayes, set your weapon down. 2 agents stepped forward. Calm, precise. One looked at me. Colonel Hayes, are you hurt? Serena froze. Mom's breath caught. And in that moment, she understood exactly who I was. The voice came from the kitchen, low, calm, powerful enough to freeze every breath in the room. Sheriff Hayes, set your weapon on the table. Serena spun around, disbelief, draining the color from her face. 2 figures stepped out of the shadows. A woman in a black suit, hair tied tight, and a tall man flashing a federal ID. I knew them instantly. Agent Kincaid from OSD Tactical Command and Agent Vance from Internal Response. Their presence turned the air dense, authoritative, final. Mom's voice shook. What's happening? Kincaid didn't look her way. We received a distress signal from Colonel Cora Hayes. Ma'am. Colonel Serena's voice cracked. She's lying. You just detained a federal intelligence officer without authority. Kincaid said. Put your gun down. Serena's hand trembled. Her deputies hesitated, glancing at each other for permission she no longer had. Kincaid looked at me, nodded once. Colonel, are you hurt? No, I said, but she's about to be. Serena lunged for her phone, but Kincaid caught it. The screen glowed red. Over 800 viewers watching live. The entire town was seeing her arrest the wrong woman. You just compromised classified data on a public stream, Kincaid said. Serena stammered. What does that even mean? It means I told her you just live-streamed evidence of a federal storage site. Congratulations. A helicopter's rumble filled the distance. Serena looked up, pale as the moon. You called them no. They came because you called me a fraud. Vance opened the door as wind swept through the room. Major General Isaac Thorne stepped inside, every inch of him command and steel. At ease, everyone, he said. This won't take long. The dining room transformed into a command post. Kincaid stood at attention. Serena couldn't move. General Thorne turned to me. Colonel Hayes, are you all right? Mom gasped. Serena whispered. Colonel, she's not. She is, he cut in. And she's under my command. Then before everyone, he saluted me. General's orders, ma'am. You're clear. Serena stumbled back, realization breaking her in two. Thorne faced her one last time. Sheriff Hayes, you just detained a federal officer under classified directive. That's obstruction of national security. Her voice trembled. I didn't know. You didn't ask, he said. The badge on her chest suddenly looked heavier than her pride. Red and blue lights from the federal cars flashed across my mother's walls, washing the room in the colors of a storm that had finally broken loose. The air still carried the smell of dinner gone, cold cigarette smoke and shame. Serena sat in the corner. Wrists bound in front of her head, bowed. Mom faced her, trembling eyes hollow. I stood near the window, watching the helicopter lights fade into the dark hills beyond town. Kincaid read the Miranda in a steady voice. You have the right to remain silent. The irony burned through the quiet silence. The one thing Serena never understood was now the only right she had left. Mom whispered, I thought she was protecting us. She was protecting herself from being wrong, I said. General Thorne stood by the doorway, hands behind his back, his tone calm, but waited. You did well, Colonel. You stayed composed. Staying composed is easy, sir, when you've already lost everything once. Kincaid turned to me quietly. The stream went viral. Local media is already covering it. I exhaled slowly. Let it run. Truth deserves daylight. Serena lifted her head, eyes red, voice shaking. You wanted me humiliated. No, Serena. I wanted you to listen. She gave a hollow laugh, tears streaking down. Congratulations, Colonel. You won. You still don't get it, I said. There was nothing to win. Kincaid gestured. Two agents led Serena out. The door closed behind her, the metallic click echoing like a period at the end of a long sentence. I slipped the open cuffs from my wrists and set them on the table amid spilled wine. Keep that, I told my mother as a reminder of what silence can survive. Tears ran freely down her face. I don't even know who you are anymore. You never did, I said softly. But that's okay now. As I stepped outside, Kincaid caught up to me. They'll probably promote you sooner than planned. Rank doesn't fix what family breaks. Maybe not, she said, but it helps you stand taller when they try to push you down. I looked back at the house, its yellow light bleeding through the curtains like fading memories. I stood tall tonight, I whispered, but not for them to month. Washington felt colder than usual. The air outside the federal court building carried that muted hum of winter clean, indifferent. Inside the hearing room was all white walls and quiet discipline as sterile as a hospital. Serena sat across from me at the long table, dressed in a gray suit that looked a size too big. Her face thinner, eyes dulled to glass. No badge, no rank, just a woman learning too late that righteousness without humility is its own sentence. The presiding officer adjusted his glasses. Colonel Hayes, do you wish to press personal charges? No, sir, I answered. The system already did. General Thorne sat beside me, hands folded, gaze steady. He didn't need to speak. His silence carried the weight of a man who'd seen too many wars, some fought with weapons, some with pride. He gave a single nod, the kind that meant honor had already been restored. The prosecutor stepped forward, holding a sheet of paper, a handwritten letter, he said, submitted by Sheriff Serena Hayes prior to sentencing. He read aloud, I thought I was saving my family's name. Turns out I was only saving my pride. The room fell still, the hum of the air vent was suddenly loud enough to hear. I looked down at the letter, the uneven strokes of blue ink trembling across the page. It was the same handwriting that had once summoned me home. Full circle, the prosecutor asked. Do you wish to respond? No, I said quietly. Some letters don't need an answer. The judge's gavel came down with a soft thud. The court sentences the defendant to 6 years, reduced to 4 for lack of malicious intent. Serena turned toward me, her voice barely there. I guess you got your justice. I stood meeting her eyes for what felt like the last time. I didn't come here for justice. I came to stop a cycle. Her gaze faltered as if realizing that forgiveness wasn't part of the deal, just release. When it was over, General Thorne walked beside me through the marble hallway, his steps echoing like memory. You could have destroyed her reputation completely, he said. She did that herself, I answered. I just didn't interfere. He smiled faintly, lines deepening around his eyes. That's the highest form of mercy. Outside the city was all light and cold air. A young officer approached, saluting crisply before handing me a sealed envelope. Effective immediately. Colonel Cora Hayes reassigned it to Joint Command Strategic Unit. I opened it slowly, the paper crisp, the ink still wet. Strange, I murmured, how the higher I go, the quieter it gets. General Thorne looked ahead, his tone almost gentle. That's how real power sounds. I folded the letter and slipped it into my coat pocket. The courthouse doors opened to the wind, and for the first time in a long time, the silence didn't feel like exile. It felt like peace finally learning my name. 3 years later, winter wrapped Washington in a stillness so sharp it almost hummed. The Potomac had frozen halfway the surface, split between motion and silence like two halves of a truth that would never meet again. From the 8th floor of the Pentagon's Joint Command Wing, my office looked over the Capitol gay sky, distant traffic, the steady rhythm of a city that never stopped moving forward. A young officer knocked once before opening the door. Colonel Hayes, the Joint Command is ready. Good, I said. Let's begin. When the door closed behind him, I turned back to the desk. Between thick binders and maps of conflict zones lay a single photograph, faded and bent at the corners. 2 girls standing by Wolf Creek Lake, barefoot in the summer light, fishing lines dangling over the water. One of them had Serena's grin. The other mine looked like I still believed we were on the same side. The corner of the photo was charred, a burn mark from a night I'd tried to destroy it and couldn't. I'd kept it ever since, not as a wound, but a reminder that not everything has to disappear to be healed. The day unfolded, quietly routine and deliberate, until a knock interrupted the hum of the base. A courier handed me a small, unmarked envelope, no return address. Inside was something cold and heavy, Serena's old sheriff's badge. Beneath it, a folded note in shaky handwriting. Maybe I should have asked. I sat there for a long time. No tears, no smile, just a breath that left my body heavier than when it came. I opened the drawer and placed the badge beside another relic, the first letter Serena ever sent after 10 years of silence dinner. 6 p.m. 2 letters, one to summon the past, one to release it. Beginning and end folded into the same space. Outside, snow began to fall over the city, soft and relentless. I watched it trace pale lines down the glass, listening to the quiet that only years of noise could buy. Some wars end when you stop fighting to be understood. I didn't need her apology anymore. I didn't need anyone to believe me. Peace, I'd learned, isn't about forgiveness. It's about no longer needing to prove you were right. General Thorne's words came back to me steady as command. Real victory is when they can't rewrite your story. I smiled faintly, glancing again at the frozen river below, the cars threading through the morning fog. Life was still loud, still imperfect, but I wasn't part of the noise anymore. For the first time in years, silence didn't feel like exile. It felt like home.